Ladies and gentlemen, this is Greg Denning. I wanted to give you a heads up that the audio quality on this podcast is not good. We had some technical difficulties and it ended up just not being very strong. We apologize for that.
And we're currently stuck in Morocco, so we can't redo it.
And so we thought, man, we can't re-record it, and there was some great content there. We wanted to get it out to you anyways. So please be very forgiving of the poor audio quality and listen for any good content that you might find.
There are some gold nuggets.
Nuggets.
We feel it's worth it just for that. There are some nuggets in there.
In spite of the poor quality, please enjoy this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Extraordinary Family Life Podcast. We are your hosts, Greg and Rachel Denning. We're answering another great question today, and I'm super excited to talk about these things because the little adjustments matter so much. The 1%, the 2% adjustments, the little refinements make such a big difference. And people might be skeptical. I used to be skeptical. It's like, oh, how can such a small adjustment make such a big difference? But then once you get into it, it's in your own life, and then especially with coaching now, I get to see it in so many families, like make this little adjustment, that little adjustment, it makes a huge difference, massive difference. And it's easy to be skeptical and to hold on to your methods, but remember, if you hold on to your methods, you're holding on to your results. So if you don't like your results, you have to question your methods. And I think that humility and openness to experimenting, the willingness to just try different things. We get so married to our methods. We get married to our ways of doing things, and then we complain that it's not working.
Well, because you were saying to me the other day that essentially because you experience this in your coaching, many people really suck at self-awareness.
Yeah.
Like they think that they are self-aware, but then as you dive into details with them, because, you know, Jordan Peterson loves to say, which I hate this kind of saying, the devil's in the details, like the actual difference is found in the details of the small interaction, the way you say it, the body language, the tone, the timing. You know, we think, oh no, that can't really be the case. But from our own personal experience, as well as the experience of working with lots of clients, we know that is actually where the biggest differences can be made in the smallest little changes of details.
There it is right there. The difference is in the details.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
That could be a book title.
Yeah.
The difference is in the details. And
so,
it really is.
Yeah, and so while people often think they have self-awareness, it's by increasing the levels of their self-awareness and noticing all of the tiny details in interactions and thoughts and feelings and all of that begin to make the biggest changes for the family dynamics, the dynamics in your marriage and in your parenting, and getting the actual results you want. So that's why we love to talk about this and bring it. And the other thing is to bringing it from all these different angles. You know, that's why we go off on all of our tangents, because we're trying to help you see as many different viewpoints as possible, because ultimately what that's doing is developing networks in your brain. Like it's literally, the more you're exposed to mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, physically out in the world, the more neural connections that are made in your brain. And as your brain makes more neural connections, it becomes more developed, and that's how you become a better person, a better parent, a better spouse, by having a more developed
Which
brain,
essentially. I like the word capable, because if you look at a brain that has 1 million neural connections and you contrast it to a brain that has 100 million neural connections, like which one's more capable? Like, okay, wow, that's amazing. And there's so many pathways. And what's cool about this, I hear this all the time. People who listen to our podcast and they're like, "Oh man, that one thing you said, it was a long time ago." Like this one little thing, you mentioned this one thing, you told this one little story, and it just stuck. And so,
and often I don't even remember.
Right, exactly. Right.
I don't remember
saying that, or I was like, that was a long time ago. but whatever it was relevant at that time, and so
And made that
grabbed hold.
connection.
Yep.
that made
And
the
then they
difference.
use it.
Yeah.
So they take it home and they're like, yeah, I started, the way we do meal prep is differently. The way I discipline is different now. The way I do my exercising is different because you said that little thing, this little passing remark, and I grabbed hold of it and it made a difference.
Right.
And in that, I want to share just one example that I had this week. I was with a coaching client, and in this instance, she said, "Look, I was being tactful in my responses." I was like, "Fantastic! That's great. Tact is one of the elements, but in this particular instance, timing also mattered." And so I wanted to share that principle because even if we're doing the right thing in the right way, if we don't do it at the right time, it still won't land. And it's so frustrating because you're like, wait, I did the right thing and I did it the right way. I had really good tact. I'm like, yeah, but if the timing's off, then
Or the tone is off.
or the tone or whatever, or the relationship is off. If my relationship with you, Rachel, is not in a good spot, then no matter how tactful I am,
Or how good your timing is.
and my tone, I'm like, so this, and it's not going to land.
If we're disconnected, it's not going to have the same effect. And so, that's another key element because if you don't have, and that's going to relate to what we're talking about today, I think, as well. If you don't have that connection with your child or with your spouse, even if you're doing the right things, it's not going to have the same effect because you're missing that emotional capital, right? Like we love to talk about, the emotional bank account. If your bank account with that person is empty, it doesn't matter if you do everything perfect, saying the right things, doing the right things. It's not going to have the same effect because your bank account is drained or in the negative. So again, another key element, and that's why we keep doing this podcast. That's why we keep talking about these things again and again and again, because we want to help you see the entire picture from every angle possible, up, down, north, south, east, west, like everywhere, so that you can get a view of it, and so you can start to get those connections in your brain of like, oh yeah, this is the piece I was missing right there. Plug it in, and now everything changes. So,
man, that can be so. Well, it's so empowering and so exciting, but it can also be so frustrating.
And
because
daunting.
If you have a combination lock that has to be done, and let's say it has 7 numbers, and you get 6 of them right, but you're just off by 1 digit on that 7th, the lock won't unlock.
Right. No, it's true.
And you're like, I'm doing everything.
And I love this. I'm glad you came up with this analogy because that's beautiful. I think that's exactly what it's like. Parenting well, having an amazing marriage, it's like trying to open a combination lock. And you can be doing most of the things right, but if you're missing something that's a key element, the lock's not going to open. And you'll be like, I've tried everything. I'm doing everything I can. And yet we're like, wait a second. And that is the benefit of coaching because you're diving in with them deep, like, okay, let's go through all the combination locks and see what you're missing. And then when you get that one, that's when it opens everything up.
That happens every time. Like, okay, what about this? Oh, good job. What about this? Yep, great. Yep, good. Wow, good job. You're nailing that. Wow, good. Wow, you're doing so well. And they're like, why am I not getting results? Oh, it's the last number.
Yeah.
And you're only 1 digit off. Just roll that thing a little bit and you got it.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's what makes the difference. Because otherwise, if you keep doing the 6 numbers right and you're just off on the 7, you keep doing it, the resentment builds. The drain on the relationship accounts, the irritation.
There's
and
hopelessness.
finally this is explosion or implosion and terrible outcomes and real suffering. And it's like, oh, you were so
But I was
close.
doing all the things.
Yeah.
Right.
So powerful.
So that, and I think
And that's so relevant for today's comment.
It definitely is. And I think that's bringing it back to the power of self-awareness, which you often need someone to help you have self-awareness. That's one of the benefits of being married. It's helping you have more self-awareness because your spouse is aware of you and notices more the things that you are doing or not doing that are annoying or frustrating or irritating or not leading to you being your best self, right? That's the power of marriage, but although we often find that the annoying part of marriage, but that's one of the
That's
benefits, actually.
exactly what it's for. if you've gotten to a place where you've trained your spouse to not give you feedback, I feel sorry for you. Yeah, because you're not going to have near the growth and development in your marriage.
Right.
Even if your marriage is good, it won't get to extraordinary
Right.
if you're not willing to receive that feedback from your spouse.
Mhm.
It's so important, so
Right.
powerful.
So the key then is to realize, and that's not to say that you haven't developed any self-awareness, but when you realize that still the majority of your problems, like that combination lock, will be solved once you gain even more awareness. And I really think that's the goal. At least for me, that's my goal. I'm constantly saying, how can I become even more self-aware in my parenting, in my marriage, in my finances, in my business, in my productivity, in my physical fitness? How can I become more self-aware so that I can see, because like you just gave an example of the combination lock, we actually have a combination lock for all of
Everything.
these elements,
Absolutely.
right? For your fitness. You can be
Yeah.
like, I tried everything and I'm not losing weight, I've done it all. Well, no, you haven't, because otherwise you would have unlocked the combination. My parenting
Let me take a little bit of a tangent here that's relevant to all
with
of this.
fitness, because you love to
Well,
go off on
fitness
fitness.
is such an easy example because it's visible,
Right.
and almost everyone can relate to it because we have bodies and we do something, like you can relate to it. But not on fitness specifically. There's a spiritual text that I read a long time ago, and it talked about there being a kingdom, a kingdom for everything. So there's nothing in the universe that doesn't have a kingdom. So like the kingdom of health, and the kingdom of fitness, and the kingdom of finances, and the
The
kingdom
kingdom of painting, the
of
kingdom of
yes, pick anything.
building, the
Of
kingdom
investing, but of marriage and of parenting,
Yeah.
right? Of every kind of relationship, the kingdom of communication. And inside, so let me say that in a framework. There's nothing, not a single thing in the universe that isn't fit within a kingdom. And inside every kingdom, its own little kingdom, it has laws. So there are laws that govern the kingdom. Right? And
There's
it's
laws
such
of painting,
a profound
laws
visual.
of building, laws of marriage, laws
Yeah.
of finance.
And you can go down even to really these little tiny kingdoms of very specific outcomes you want, either for a specific muscle group or a
The laws
specific
of calves.
result. Yes, your calf muscles or your hamstrings, right? And then if you don't keep the flexibility there and the mobility, you lose it. So we have a good friend who's a hand surgeon, and he spent decades studying the hand and wrist and all the little intricacies. So there's a kingdom there in the wrist. It's so fascinating. And then when I was in university, I was studying chemistry and biology, and my biology professor had spent 25 years studying the common housefly. And I'm like, what a horrendous career. I was like, wow, that's terrible. But this guy spent 25 years trying to understand the fly. And so there's a kingdom for a fly.
I don't like the
Me neither. I don't like that kingdom. Kill them all.
But they have their purpose and their
I guess.
they
No, they do. But you know what I'm saying. So now, if everything has a kingdom and every kingdom is governed by laws, then if we don't know the laws and we don't live by the laws, then we don't get the positive results in the kingdom. We get the negative results
Right.
from the laws. So it's a cool framework that I love to
do.
operate.
It's like
in.
not understanding that there's a law of gravity and then wondering why you're getting hurt by tripping or like walking off a building.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, what's going on here? Why can't I do this? Why do I keep falling down, getting hurt? Well, it's like, dude, learn to work with gravity, and then you can fly even, right?
Exactly. Well, that's even a more profound comparison is learning the laws of aviation.
Mm-hmm. Which work with
Wow.
the laws of gravity
Right.
still, you know, but
Well, and that's also another one. So then you're working
Uh-huh.
with all these kingdoms that are next to each other and overlap. You're like, aha, there it is. That's part of the
Right.
combination.
okay, so tangent.
Yeah. Relevant. Let's get to the question.
Let's get to the question now. Okay. We love receiving your questions, so thank you for sending them because we love to get a glimpse into your lives, the challenges you're dealing with, what you're facing. Again, the little nuances, because it's in the nuances where the difference is in the details, and that's what makes the difference is when you dive into the details. So we want to hear the details and we want to help you dive into them.
Gosh, I gotta emphasize that. The difference is in the details. The difference is in the details. And if you feel like you're so close and yet so far away, I don't know, this is why coaching is so powerful.
So here we go. It starts just by saying, I don't know why I can't stick to routines! Exclamation point. Would you say routines can be different for different families? And here different people say to work before play, and that's what kids need to learn as well.
Wait, okay, we gotta pause. So it starts off by saying, I can't stick to routines, which is inaccurate because
everyone has a routine.
And everyone is sticking to their routine.
Right, yeah.
What's accurate is I'm having a hard time creating a new routine.
Yes.
And sticking to a new routine because what you're doing is you're doing a great job at sticking to your old routine.
You can't not have a routine.
You can't not. So there it is. There's a kingdom of routines. And everyone has routines, and whether they're aware of it or not, or conscious of it or not, or whether they consciously established it or not, or they're just doing it by default, everyone has a routine, they do the routine. Like, that's how the human body works, that's how the brain works.
Like, you literally can function without that.
Yeah, there's no way you can function without routines. So, you
might not be the routine you want.
Truly great at sticking to routines. Like, you were designed and created, your entire biology and psychology is created around routines. So you're phenomenal. Every human being listening, you are absolutely phenomenal at sticking to routines.
You're just sticking to the one you don't want.
Well, or the one you just have. And so if you want
I say that because obviously she probably means I'm trying to create a new routine and I can't stick to that. And
because I keep sticking to the
old routine.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for that is because if you think about the neurophysiology of the brain, your brain creates neural connections, and the more it does the same thing, the more it keeps a routine, the stronger that neural connection becomes. In fact, if you thought about it like a rut in the ground, if there's some wagon ruts in the ground, that's where the next wagon is going to roll, right in those ruts, because that's the easiest route. It's the same in our brain. Our brain has these ruts. That's why we even say things like, I feel like I'm stuck in a rut. Like,
you are.
It's literal.
Yeah.
It's literally like that. So you have these very, very, very strong neural connections that are like, no, this is how we do things. I'm not going to change it because, one, there's no other place to go. If you want to think of it literally like that, it's because you do not have another strong neural connection to take the place of this one that is already very ingrained. So
I like that. I want to expound on it a little bit. So you have a deep rut that's just unconsciously or subconsciously, just patterns over time. It's stuck. So to get a vehicle out of a rut, if any of you have ever driven off-road or dirt roads where there's a rut and it's a little bit wet and you're trying to get out of the rut, it is insanely difficult.
Right. That's what's happening in your brain.
Every once in a while, you pop up out of the rut and you're like, yeah, I'm on a new path, and then you slide back in. And then you're trying to get back out. So that's what's happening. You're trying to get out of the rut. Now you go up a couple times, but that doesn't make a new road yet. It's not a new pathway. It's not a new track that's going to be easy. You're naturally going to slip back into the old rut until you've driven on the new path so many times that it's easy to stay there.
Yes. So, and as he talks about in Atomic Habits, which is a fantastic book, like one of the keys to making those changes, to changing your routine to what it is you want, changing the habits to what it is you want, is you have to make it easy to do the new thing you want to do and hard or impossible to do the old thing that you used to do, right? So the ultimate key, and I love this take that he has, is based on changing your environment rather than simply trying to have the willpower to change it yourself. So in this scenario, right, if you were trying to do that, you would change the environment. You would literally dig up the road or fill it with dirt.
That's what I was just thinking. in my world, and this is how I've done this, how I've been so successful at making massive changes in my life, I'm going to go to the old rut and I'm literally filling those suckers in with rocks. And it's going to be a ton of work. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to drastically change my environment so much that the rut is no longer.
Yeah, you don't get stuck in the rut again because
the rut doesn't
gone.
exist.
Right.
And you're like, well, that's a lot of work. Yep. And you're like, well, that's pretty drastic. And I've been accused of being extreme or, obsessed or, well, geez, that's pretty intense. And so much. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have the rut anymore.
Exactly.
That rut is gone. I literally filled it with rocks.
So a perfect example, again, another good model of this, not only health and fitness, well, health specifically, meaning diet specifically, we have literally, in front of our children, to emphasize the point, we have been extreme in throwing candy down the toilet or throwing cookies in the garbage. I mean, our kids will bring stuff home from church or whatever, and we just take it and we put it in the garbage can.
Well, we get it. That makes it sound like they walk through the door and we grab it out of their hands. Like, give me that crap, you little monster.
Okay.
You're like, hey guys, that's
the
that's
details
not.
matter.
So we teach them tactfully. We teach them how to do it. Like, it's really not good for you. Like, of course, you're free to eat it if you want, but it's really not good for you.
It's really garbage, so
And
it should
it
go
is
in the garbage.
Yeah, exactly. So what's in that? And we teach them, so they get it. They're like, oh, but I still like it. And for a while when they're little, especially, like, I still want to eat. And you're like, okay, go ahead. And then they'll be like, I feel gross afterwards, or I got a tummy ache. And you're like, yeah, it's because that's garbage.
Throw it in
So
the
then they
garbage.
get used to it, and we're like, yeah, let's just throw it away. And so they take it, and you see them, they're contemplating this, like, I know it tastes good, like, and they put it in the trash can.
Mhm.
And like, that's where it belongs. And so we're reiterating that.
Yeah, and there have been other times when, for me personally at least, when I was studying health and nutrition, because my whole story of my dad being diagnosed with cancer 1 week after we met, and then dying from cancer, I've been
1
studying.
week after Rachel and I met,
Yes.
not 1 week after she met her dad.
That's what I meant. After 1 week after you and I met. And then, I've been studying health and nutrition ever since then, learning that the food pyramid is a scam and all of this stuff. And so when I learned about the negative effect of high fructose corn syrup and seed oils and all of these things, I've literally gone into our pantry, taken things that had those ingredients, and thrown them in the garbage. Even though I'm like, this is wasting, blah, blah, blah.
We paid
I'm like,
good money for that.
I paid money for this. It doesn't matter. That's the type of drastic action we're willing to take. If I'm like, I should not be putting this in my body, I'm throwing it in the garbage. So I'm filling in that rut, so I'm not like, oh, why can't I eat healthy? Why can't I stick to my diet? Well, it's easy for me because I don't have anything in my house that violates my diet, right? So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. Like, you have to change your environment, and then you don't have to use willpower. I'm not going to buy Oreos and then be like, dang it, why can't I stop eating Oreos? Well, I've got them in the house. That's why.
So it's so much easier to not buy them than to bring them home and not eat them.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking
And
about.
we keep bringing them home. Another one that came up recently that this just kills me. It just absolutely kills me. And I think it's because parents don't understand or know. They keep feeding their kids cold cereal.
Right.
Cold cereal is toxic sludge.
Or even things like giving them orange juice.
Well, yeah, that's
I
next
just
level.
saw Joe Rogan, a clip on Instagram where he was talking about that. He's like, if you want orange juice, eat an orange.
Yep.
But if you drink orange juice, it's literally like drinking sugar water.
Yeah, same with apple juice, grape juice, any
Yeah.
juices. But
So-
we think we're giving our kids healthy things
Right.
by like, no, I get them. I buy the healthy cereal,
Mm-hmm.
so I buy like just the bran flakes, which are designed to kill testosterone in men. Literally, that's not conspiracy theory. It was straight up conspiracy from these guys who wanted to kill testosterone.
To reduce libido,
Kellogg's
to keep
and Graham.
it
They wanted
was
libido
like-
down. They
yeah.
wanted sex drive to go away. They wanted to make the world a better
them would
place.
be less sexual.
And so they poisoned people through food. And so I think when I'm buying the bran flakes and skim milk, because you know it's fat, and then I
Which
give
is
them
all
some
wrong
juice,
thinking.
and it's like you are creating the behavioral problems in your child
Right,
by
because
feeding them those toxins.
because one of the things we've learned through studying this is that your behavior is directly affected by the food you're putting in your body. And so parents are wondering, why are my kids acting like this? Why are they being so, we love to use the word scurvy, like they're so disturbing and annoying. Well, part of and again, it's not, there's lots of levels here, but one of the contributing factors is what you're feeding them. It literally is affecting their behavior, especially when you're feeding them things that spike their blood sugar and insulin levels, like orange juice.
I don't know how to emphasize this enough. Like, give your kids straight meat.
Especially
Just
first thing in the morning.
give
Like the
them
very first thing they need is some eggs and some
free
meat.
range eggs, cheese, and meat.
That will change your life.
Like grass fed ground beef, a grass fed steak, some free range eggs,
Some bacon, some sausage.
and some milk, some plain Greek
Yeah.
yogurt, like the fattest stuff you can get. And just put all of your emphasis on fats and proteins. I promise you'll automatically get enough carbohydrates as you're just, grazing throughout the day. So put all of your focus and attention, obsession on fats and proteins, and it will change your life and their life.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't got a question yet.
I
This
know.
is good.
Okay. So you wanted to stop. You wanted to say stick to routines. You are sticking your routine. We talked about how to change that.
Yeah.
Would you say routines can be different for different families? Absolutely. 100%.
Yep.
Like if every family followed the same routine, that would be a dystopian novel, pretty much. But like that's The Giver or something. We don't want that. We don't want every family to follow the same exact routine. So when we're talking about what's the best routine, well, ultimately the best routine is going to be what works best for your family. Now, of course, there
And
is going to be.
We're going to get into this. The differences in the details.
Yeah.
So sometimes the routines that work for our family or work for lots of families might not be working for your family. It's not that the routine is wrong. It's that maybe one element of the delivery is wrong or one other aspect, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. If we get the other aspects off, well, then the routine doesn't work. And so you're like, hey, this routine doesn't work. You said it worked, it doesn't work. It's not the routine. It's these other little details that make all the difference.
And, I think there are also some things that just may not work for your family at all, And so we're not saying it's one size fits all. We are, again, just teaching common denominators that are going to vary for each family because every family is unique.
Okay, still though, I'm going to be I'm going to be bold and kind of, I'm just going to be bold and frank with that. I used to think, well, no, not every family can do these things, and it's not for everybody. Every family is unique. But the more I've worked with more families across the world, the more I've studied this, I do wholeheartedly believe there are some common denominators that every single family should do, period. Like
that being said,
reading.
okay,
Every family should read, and every parent should read to their kids. And you're like, wow, that's pretty bold. Like, every family? And yeah, well, my kids don't like it. It's because you're doing it wrong. And that's come up many times in coaching. Like, well, I tried reading to my kids, and they don't like it. I'm like, well, and I was sitting there, I'm like, what's the details? I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, well, what book are you reading? And he tells me a book. I'm like, that's a great book. Kids love that book. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out the combination lock. I'm like, okay, he's reading to them. That's great. He's reading the right books. That's great. He's doing it before bed. He's doing it in a positive way. He's bringing them, inviting them. All this, yes. I'm like, why is this not working? And finally, I'm like, well, how are you reading to them? Like, he's like, well, I'm just reading the book. I'm like, well, okay, like, read a paragraph for me. Like, how are you reading it? And it realized out it's like so monotone, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, there's the problem. Like, the way you're reading it's so boring, it'll put the most interested kid to sleep. Like, you gotta read it like a dramatist. I mean, you gotta act out the book. I'm like, try that. And he came back home, he's like, they love it. It's amazing. I do the voices and everything. They can't get enough. They just want, there it is. Okay.
that's
So that's why. But if we stop there and we don't find the detail,
Mm-hmm.
then you think, no, like my kids
Doesn't
don't like
work.
reading, and reading isn't for my family.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
It is.
But that being said, still, when, where, how, whatever, there are certain details that are going to be different for every single family.
Sure.
when we say those kind of things, like every family should read it, again, it's not a dystopian novel of like 6 o'clock, it's reading time for all families.
Right.
You know, it's not that type of thing. You have to find your secret sauce for your unique family to apply that specific principle.
Yep. So it might be reading after dinner,
Or in the morning, or
on the couch,
before bed, or on the couch, or
In
in
bed.
bed, or like you find what works for you to be able to do that thing. Okay. So she says, I hear different people say work before play, and that kids need to learn that. Did you have a comment about that?
Oh, I have lots of
Okay,
comments about
because
that.
I was going to say too,
Go on.
especially for young children, playing is work. Playing is their work.
Playing is their life.
Playing is their life. And playing is how they learn. There was a very famous psychologist called Jean Piaget, who was French, and he just studied children and how they learn. And playing, unstructured play, is one of the most important things that young children can do. So this whole idea of work before play, no, not with young children. That should not be the case. Now that does not mean that they shouldn't do anything, but you know, like I saw a reel on Instagram, this is what makes me think of it the other day, of this mommy influencer teaching how to parent, and she's literally forcing her probably not even 2-year-old child to pick up a spoon and throw it into the garbage. That's my type of idea when I think of work before play, like that's what parents are doing, and not to that extreme, of course, but
But many are.
but many are like that. Like
Because
you
they-
will pick up your spoon before you can play.
Because they grab hold of an idea, some statement,
Yeah.
and somebody says, hey, work before play. And on the surface, you might think, yeah, that's a good principle.
Mhm.
We should be work before play.
Yeah.
And we grab hold of that and we become like devout religionists around
We
that
become, like,
principle.
Totalitarian leaders.
Right.
You know?
And we miss the proper application of the principle.
Exactly.
And then I would say for a great many people, there's just too much work and not enough play, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna repeat that. For a lot of good people, there's way too much work and not enough play.
Well, and I think partly because they're not actually playing.
I was thinking that same
They
thing.
are not detoxing. They're like, what's the word they use? They're like, I just need to
I need downtime,
downtime. I just
chilling,
need to,
relaxing,
unwind.
Yep.
and they do that by scrolling on their phone or
Watching something mindlessly,
That's not playing.
or even playing video games.
Or
Like,
playing
I'm
video
playing.
games.
You're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
That's virtual playing.
Right.
Like all you're doing is like wiggling your thumbs. Like you're not playing. So watching sports and playing sports,
Very different
totally
things.
different.
Right.
Playing
That's
a
why
video game
one
and
is
not
called
having
watching and one is called playing.
right, and then having a real adventure, totally different.
Right.
Like you watching some Bear Grylls thing
It's
and
cool.
you going out backpacking are very different things.
Yeah.
And so you get very different results. Most people are not playing enough.
And then the irony is, then they're still taking this principle and being like, well, I'm going to make my kids work before they can play, when what a child really needs is unstructured play. They
More play.
need more playtime. And I would say there's probably some sort of diagram or something you could do this where they literally need nonstop playing, and then as they grow older, that diminishes, right? So there's like these diminishing returns, so that the amount of play reduces, and then it's like it almost becomes nonstop work, and you have to be intentional to add more play back into their life.
But what we've done that has worked extremely well in our family is as we're making those transitions, we make work fun.
Yeah.
And an ideal life, and I want to encourage you with all the fervor I can here, listeners, I want to encourage you to make your life enjoyable, for you to be enjoyable, so that you actually love your work, that your work is fulfilling and meaningful, and when you're doing work, you can actually have fun doing work. That's a leap for a lot of people. I remember I've taught this for years and years and years and years, and I remember people wrestling with like, well, how can I do work when it's work? How can I have fun when it's work? I'm like, well, you can do it. It's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like figure out how to have fun while you're working. And they're like, well, okay, maybe if you're doing, that kind of work you enjoy, but what if it's like hard work? I'm like, okay, is it possible? Is there anybody on the planet who can have fun while doing hard work? And they wrestle with that and like, well, yes, I guess hypothetically it's possible. I'm like, well, if it's possible, then you can do it too. Try it.
Right.
And I remember doing it with a lot of people all the time, and they would go just put in this real effort, and they're like, wow, the work day flew by. In fact, the work week flew by, and we had a blast. So instead of complaining and mumbling and grumbling and thinking how much you hated it all week, you actually had fun with it while doing very strenuous, difficult work, and they had fun doing it.
Right. Well, you said another key ingredient there where you're like, as they make that transition from play in childhood to working, is that you actually make the work fun. And that is how you make that transition. So when you're talking about, work before play, well, no, that's not accurate with small kids. And you let them play as much as possible because that's healthier for them, that's healthier for their development, that's easier on you. It really is. It's easier to be a parent when you let, especially small children, play as much as possible.
But
It will
I
make
can hear the
It'll make
parents
your
right
life
now.
so much easier.
It's so much better. But I can hear parents right now. I'm like, but they need to brush their teeth, and they need to put their pajamas on, and they need
Which
to take
we're
a
going
bath,
to get to.
and they have to clean up, and they have to learn responsibility because I don't want my kids not being responsible, and so we kill their childhood
Yes. And
because we're so afraid they're not going to be responsible adults.
Right. And it doesn't work like that. The more you allow them to play while they are young, the healthier they are going to be and the happier they're going to be. And the easier it will be to help them make that transition to responsibility, to work, to adulthood.
Because
Okay?
they got to be kids.
But part of how you do that, going back to what you said, is you turn work into play. So you begin to help them work by making work a game. You make it fun. You put music on. You dance. You do it with them. You literally make it fun. And that's how they learn to start working, and they learn to like working, which is what you want them to do.
But I have all these voices because I've worked with people for
Yeah.
so long. I can hear your voice in my head. Like as we're talking about some, you're like, but they've got to learn that sometimes you just do things you don't like.
Right.
They've got to learn that life is just hard and you just do it anyways because it has to be done. And to you, sir or madam, I want to invite you to question it. And question that fixed mindset. Challenge it. Really? Truly?
Yes, Greg, of course.
Does life have to be miserable? There are things you just, it's just a grind? I think, for the most part, people who really embrace that mentality, it's because they themselves are not very pleasant or happy.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very jovial, and they have these fixed mindsets. And so they've chosen, kind of probably by default, unconsciously or subconsciously, to be grumpy and unpleasant and gritty, like, I hate this and I just have to do it. This is part of being an adult, just doing these miserable things. And I'm like, it's not the thing. It's you, sir.
Because I think it goes back to what you were saying before, that yes, there are definitely things in life that you may not want to do, but it needs to be done. But when you learn to change your approach, to change your mindset about it, then you actually can learn to do it without feeling upset, resentful, angry, bitter about the fact that you have to wash the dishes again, and that you'll probably have to wash the dishes again every day for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Like you instead learn to be like, okay, I'm just going to embrace this. I'm going to make it a joyful part of my routine.
Or I'm just going to choose to be joyful about it, even though it needs to be done.
Right.
This is one of the superpowers that I've deliberately developed over years. Is I got into doing very hard, very painful, very challenging things, and I kept questioning myself: is it possible to be happy while doing something that's insanely difficult and unpleasant? And sit with that. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try practicing it. And I had to work on it for a long time, but now I can be in just grinding, in pain, suffering through some kind of challenge, some kind of difficulty, some problem, whatever, and still be pleasant and jovial and joyful. And I've got to the point where I'm going to smile, I'm going to have fun, playful conversations while I'm suffering. I've taught my kids to do this. So while we're out doing something insanely hard, some adventure in the
Kilimanjaro.
wilderness. Yeah, we're climbing huge mountains, and frankly, often carrying other people's packs, right? Teaching myself and my kids, like, hey, we help out. We come in such a condition that we can carry other people's loads. And while we're doing it, we're smiling, having fun conversations. Nobody can know how much we are, our bodies are hurting, the muscles are burning, because we're just carrying on a fun, blast conversation like we're just having a stroll around the park.
Yeah.
And it's totally possible to do.
And to expound on that a little more, so there's not this Mary Poppins or Pollyanna view of it. I know that on that specific trip, summit day, you're vomiting.
Oh, wow.
My son's vomiting. He's
In fact,
got
at that point,
cellulitis in his legs.
I had been vomiting for 3 days.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
Vomiting for
and
3 days. The other two of
severe
our children
infection.
that made it to the top, I mean, they told me how hard it was and how miserable it was.
Worst thing I've ever done?
Yeah.
Hardest thing I've ever done.
Hardest thing they've ever done. But, so in that moment, it's not like they're joking and whatever. They're just focusing on getting through. But as soon as they're through that pain and suffering, they're just back to, happy. It's not like, oh my gosh, that was so hard, and now they have to be miserable the rest of the day.
Or the rest of their lives and
Right.
sign up for therapy because it was the most miserable experience they've ever had.
Right. And, you guys were vomiting, and our son had the cellulitis in his legs. Here I am in my fancy resort with my 2 younger children, and I get a message from you saying, we're coming to you, right? And I'm like, you're supposed to be at the top of the mountain, what's happening? Because you two didn't summit, but you walked off the mountain that day. I mean, I don't even know how far it was.
It was over 10 miles.
Yeah.
After an
trying to
attempt-
summit.
Yeah.
And vomiting, and you walked off the mountain, and that night, I mean, and even Parker that night was throwing up again, still. But you were still smiling and happy and jovial and,
playing with the little girls.
playing with the little girls, and we had
happy
dinner
time.
together, and it was nice. Laughing about you guys vomiting on
Right.
Kilimanjaro. So it's like, yeah, the suffering is real, and it's there, but you can still find the joy in it. Now, obviously, there are times when you're meant to be grieving. You're meant to be sad.
Absolutely.
We're not talking about like when your brother died.
Right.
You didn't make a joke out of that.
Right.
There is
There's-
a real time for real sorrow.
For real mourning,
Yes.
for real anger, to feel the whole spectrum of emotions, yes. In this, I'm just referring to, hey, this is unpleasant work. Even like changing diapers.
Yeah.
I had to switch my mindset of like, because we had 7 kids and they were packed in close together. They're all, born close to each other. That was a lot of diapers.
For like 10 years.
I had poop on my fingers all the time, and the stench and the dirtiness.
Maybe you just need to get better at changing diapers.
Well, there was explosions.
Yeah.
I mean, there were blowouts all the time. Like blowouts that would get all the way up to their neck. I'm
Yeah.
like, how do you get crap to go up? It's like defying the laws of gravity. I'm like, I'm just throwing away this whole outfit because it's beyond. And I'm washing out stuff in the ocean and rivers and on the side of the
Because
road.
we're traveling.
A whole package of wipes, and I'm like, yeah. And I would get so frustrated about it, and I hated it because it's disgusting. But I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Do I want to just be miserable and unpleasant for the next 10 years? Diapers are my reality.
Yeah.
Like, poop is in my reality. I get peed on all the time and wet, when kids wet the bed or pee their pants or whatever, and breaking. I'm like, okay, I'm either going to be a really unpleasant, miserable person for years, or I do all these nasty, dirty things and still be pleasant. My choice. I get a choice. So if you can choose to be miserable and unpleasant, or to be pleasant and, at least, I don't know, happy. I mean,
At least
whatever.
neutral.
At least neutral. Well, why would I choose to be miserable? Suffering is inevitable. The disgusting is inevitable. The unpleasant stuff is inevitable. But I don't have to be unpleasant.
Right. And I think that it's just because we're taught or we learn through conditioning it doesn't work like that. Like if you're suffering, you're supposed to be miserable. It's
Right.
almost like you're required. Like put on your suffering face because it's suffering time. You know,
Put on the long face.
put on the diaper changing face.
Let people know how much you're suffering.
Okay, back to the question. This is good. I really do feel that this is all good stuff. Hopefully you do too. Because it's important for us to go through all these details and scenarios. So she goes back and she says, work over play, we talked about that. I've been playing with my son first thing in the morning. Now in a different email, I think she tells me that he's 7.
Okay, perfect.
So,
When
except
the
no,
first time a
very
kid
first
comes
thing-
into consciousness, like they often want to go right into play. Great.
That is great. One of the concerns I have here is that she's saying, I've been playing with my son first thing in the morning. You don't need to do that. Your child should know how to play without you. If you have to make an effort in order for them to play, something's off here.
Or if you feel like you have to structure
You have the
their play.
obligation to structure their play, that's off.
Like I have to be involved, or I have to play with them, or I have to have them play a certain way, or I have to protect them in their play. Then
There's a lot of course,
Yeah.
details there that make the difference, and so I would be interested in hearing more about that. She does say he used to wake up angry. Now, that's interesting, because one of the only reasons I could think of a child waking up angry is if they're woken up.
yes, that would do
If
it.
you wake them up, they can be angry. I am a firm believer, and I 100% live by this as much as possible.
Don't wake your kids up.
Do not wake your kids up. When they are sleeping, let them sleep. Now, I wasn't always this way. When we adopted our first, Kaya, Greg and I were early risers. When Greg and I first got married, legit, I'm not joking about this. When Greg and I were newlyweds, we would get up together at 4 a.m. to read and study together. We were total nerds, and we would do that. And then I thought when we adopted our first, I'm like, I'm going to train my children to wake up early, so I'm waking up my baby at 6 a.m. every day
Same.
to get into the habit.
Because
That is one of the
we-
stupidest ideas I've ever had in my life.
Yes, because well, this is why we want our kids to be early risers,
Yeah.
right? That was
We want
our,
our kids to be
and we-
productive
and we
happy.
do. I want them to, but we thought let's train them from an early age.
Yes.
It's the dumbest thing we could have
Right.
done because it's so unhealthy to wake up your kids.
Right.
Now I
Your
can hear the
children
voices
need
again, like,
sleep.
wait a minute, I have to wake up my kids to get them ready for school. Take them out of school.
Exactly. That is one of the major, like legit, if I could emphasize this, that is one reason alone to homeschool your kids so you don't have to get them up early. One of the most important things they can be doing at that age is getting enough sleep. They should be, because every hour of sleep that they miss out on that they should be getting, it literally lowers, like there's research about this, it lowers their functioning, I want to say their functioning IQ, not necessarily their overall IQ, but like their ability to function by 1 grade level.
Okay, and let's say, for example, because I hear people saying, well, I can't homeschool right now. Here's what I would do, and all we're going to share is what's worked for us and for our clients.
And for the millions of homeschoolers that are
Yeah,
homeschooling.
I am adamantly in favor of homeschooling, or at least home sourcing. You don't have to be the educator necessarily, or alternative ways of education. But let's say, for example, you just cannot do it. Then I legitimately would wait until my child wakes up and then take them over to school. I don't
Mhm.
give a crap what anyone else says or when the other kids are there or when class starts. I don't care. I roll in, oh yeah, and they're like, your child's late. Yep. Good morning to you. Have a great day. And like, your child's late again. Yep. Because I allow my child to sleep. Because I'm
Here's
more
all the
concerned
research on sleep.
about well-being.
What
Yeah,
idea.
exactly. Why don't you research sleep for children, since you work with children? Why don't you research that, and we can talk about it later. I'm not waking my kid up.
Yeah.
No way in the world am I waking my kid up. And so then I would deal with consequences joyfully. Oh, I would actually love that. That would be so fun. Purposely bring your kid to school like 30, 40 minutes late every day. It's like, yeah, he likes to sleep in because it's good for him. You're just killing all these other kids, you monsters.
You would enjoy that.
I would love it. Because
Okay.
the research is there. Like, all they have to do is, like, Google it and be
Right.
like, oh, he's totally right. What are we doing? We should move the entire school schedule back an hour.
Yes. No, it's true. It's totally true. And it's like in Spain, that's what they do. I think
Right.
school doesn't start till 10 a.m. or
Right.
something like that,
Which is how it should be.
which is how it should be. Okay, so she's playing with him first thing in the morning. He used to wake up angry. So yeah, again, the details matter, but part of my guess is he being woken up
And
and
that's training. Kids, people do what
a
they've been trained to do.
naturally healthy, I don't know how many times we can emphasize this. A naturally healthy child who has their needs met, which means sleep, food, connection with parents, whatever,
Love, a good, safe,
Love.
happy environment.
emotional needs met, their natural state is happiness.
Yep.
They should not be waking up angry, and they shouldn't be angry throughout the day as long as their needs are being met. Now, this is not to be misunderstood because we had one listener comment one time we did a whole episode about meeting your children's needs, and she left like this 3-star review saying, well, when my children say that they need more screen time, I'm not just going to give it to them. No, that is not what I mean, okay? When I'm saying meet your children's needs, I'm not talking about the things they tell you they need. Well, I need some new clothes, and I need screen time, and I need some
more friends
candy.
in my time. Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. Just because they use the word need doesn't mean it's an actual need. I'm talking about legit Maslow's hierarchy of needs, mental, emotional, physical needs. That's what I'm talking about. When they have those things met, they're naturally happy. So if he's waking up angry, there's definitely something going on. Another thing might be, and depending on how he's been trained, quote unquote, he may know that as soon as he wakes up, he's expected to do something, and he doesn't want to
So
do that.
then he wakes up to this reality he doesn't like.
Yeah, he's
angry.
waking up to, I have to do something that I'm being forced to do, and I don't want to do it. So allowing him to play, and this is a good step if she's been playing with him, that's great.
Any control, any manipulation, any forcing, any.
And I can see this
gigantic.
happening.
It's a symptom. If he wakes up angry, there's a symptom that something on a big level is off.
Something's off in his world, and he doesn't know what else to do about it except get angry as soon as he wakes up, because he doesn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Now, I can definitely see that this can happen, especially if kids are going to school, because they're waking up from a young age, like this one's 7, and they're being forced to do things they don't want to do, to get ready to go to school, someplace they don't want to be. And so, yeah, naturally, I can imagine there's going to be a lot of anger and frustration and tears and fighting. It doesn't have to be that way. Another reason we promote homeschooling. But, yeah, even if you have to take them to school for now, find a different way.
Yep.
You know, even because one thing I thought, and I don't know if you can do this in younger grades, but at least in high school, you don't have to have a first period, right? And so you just miss that period.
That's
And
what
you
I'm
get to-
saying. I'm going to skip it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, I don't give a crap. And we have to get to this point where we put our kids first.
We have to be pushing back against the system in some way, because otherwise the system will remain unchanged.
And
So-
now some of you listening are questioning our sanity.
Yeah.
And so we're inviting you, look around right now.
And see how it's working.
Look how it's working. Okay, look at the whole system and see how it's working. We have an absolute crisis of mental, physical, and emotional health.
Yeah.
And social health.
Absolutely a crisis.
It is a
So is
serious,
it working?
widespread
No.
problem.
It is not working at all.
Clearly, the evidence is against the whole system,
Exactly.
everything they're doing is broken.
And compare that to not only our own family, but lots of families we know where our children don't wake up angry. They're not forced to do
They're so
something
excited to be alive.
they don't want to do. They're excited to get up. They're happy. They can't wait to start their day, and they're engaged in wonderful, exciting, amazing things. Like the last few days has been spent watercoloring. They've been doing, from our youngest to our oldest at home, oldest daughter, they're doing watercolors. Like there's so much fun and creativity and play and learning that's happening.
Reading and listening to
There's no
audiobooks, and they're
crying,
doing
there's
their
no
studies.
fighting, there's no anger.
And there's tons of
frustration.
kids here staying at our resort right
Yeah.
now. And
Exactly.
it's just unstructured play for hours and hours and hours. It's so awesome.
Okay, and she says that she had heard some parenting advice was to play or have special time with them before you need them to cooperate with you. Well, that goes back to essentially the emotional bank account that we love to talk about. You do need to be making deposits into your child's emotional bank account if you want to make any withdrawals. And asking your child to do something, is, despite what many parents think, that is actually making a withdrawal. If you ask your child to brush their teeth or you ask them to get dressed, that can be making a withdrawal from their emotional bank account. So yeah, you have to have a bank account there in order to have cooperation from that. So that is true.
I think and this is where I wanted to get into one particular principle for this entire conversation. We've made all kinds of tangents here that fit, but this, what I'm about to say is the whole thing. Your demeanor as a parent, as a person, your emotional state is the energy that is generated and radiated in the home and family and in the relationships. So if my demeanor is off, if my state is off, if it's low, if it's negative, if it's serious, if it's grumpy, if it's blah, that's what radiates, and that's what the kids pick up and absorb and then model.
Yeah.
So even if I'm checking all of the boxes, they'll magnify it too, and or they'll take it in a different direction where you kind of, well, I know I should do this, but they don't know that, so they take what the energy you're giving them and they go somewhere else with it, and you're like, I didn't intend that, like, but that's what you gave them. So if I'm checking the boxes, so I hear some parenting experts say, you should play with your kids, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to add that to my to-do list, play with child. And so you go there and you're like, let's play, but you're still miserable,
or resentful about it, because you're like, I don't have time to play right now.
And I've had the opportunity to speak on a lot of stages, be keynote speakers, do presentations, seminars, webinars, and I love to ask people what their predominant emotion is, because we're trying to find out, like, what's your state on a given week or a given day. What's the honest emotion you feel most of the time? For adults, it's irritation, frustration. That's the most common answer. Like, if I'm totally honest with myself, I'm irritated or frustrated most of the time. That's very, very true for moms.
Mm-hmm.
Moms, if they're not really conscious and aware and self-aware, and they're not deliberately choosing a better emotion, most moms, and well, dads too, dads are, grumpy, angry, irritated, whatever, but they're operating in a state of irritation.
Mm-hmm.
So if your unconscious emotional state, your demeanor is mostly irritation, even while you're checking the play box and do the chores box and brush your teeth, get ready box, what you're radiating is irritation.
Right.
Well, how does that show up in your kids? Sometimes anger, sometimes resentment, fighting, bitterness, dejectedness.
Uncooperation.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the other key to this, because I know a lot of moms are like, but I'm very good at managing that. I'm managing my irritation. I'm managing my frustration. And we're like, okay, great.
But that's like wearing a mask.
Yeah, that's not really the point. We're talking about, you're using this word demeanor, you're talking about like your essential way of being, or like how you're actually feeling and what you're actually radiating. So if you're controlling and managing your irritation and frustration, that's very different than actually feeling happy.
That's symptom management versus cure.
Exactly. So we're talking about literally getting into a positive state rather than being in or managing and controlling a negative state. It's a very different thing. So that's what you mean by this demeanor. Like, have your demeanor, have the energy you're bringing to these interactions with your children be from a positive state, not one of annoyance, or I have to help them, make them do this thing, or try to persuade them to do this thing, but you're coming from a place of like, kind of angst.
Right. So if as a dad, maybe I'm okay, so my life was rough, starting out as a kid, and I ended up, leaving home at 16, that's a rough time. So I could hold on to that, and I could consciously or subconsciously be bitter and angry at life. Life just sucks. It's just hard. And then I could have a job that I don't like, and I feel unfulfilled, and I feel like I should be farther along in life, and I feel like, life's just unfair, and it's the government and the IRS and all the crime and the terrible things in the world, evil people, and life's just, people are just out to get you, and life just sucks. And and I have those going on, but I manage them. And so I put the mask on, and I'm managing this deep anger, bitterness, pissed offness, at the whole world and everything that's gone wrong in it, and the neighbor this and the employees that, and the economy that, whatever. But that's what's radiating out, and kids pick up on it. Kids are amazing. They can see through masks. Now they can't articulate it, they can't point it out, but they see right through it. So they know what's really there. So, and the reason I brought it up right at that moment, because if I go with that demeanor, that true state, and from that space, even if I put on the show or the facade, and I try
And
to
do and
ask
say all the
them
right things.
to do their chores, I'm still doing it from my demeanor. I cannot get away from who I am. So
Well,
this is Parker Palmer,
That's what I was going to say. Parker Palmer,
The Courage to Teach.
Yeah, he has a great book about that, and he says
You
essentially,
teach what you are.
and I think that that's 100% true with parenting or with being in a marriage. Like, you cannot get away from that. So all of your interactions, regardless if you're doing or saying the right thing,
So profound.
you can't get away from who you are.
Yep.
And so you are essentially radiating who you are, and that is I would be bold enough to say that's probably the primary influence that is affecting your interactions with your child or with your spouse, regardless of doing and saying all the right things. Who you are comes out the strongest.
It can't not. None of us can avoid it. None of us can hide it. I don't care what the subject is we're teaching or what interaction is, we can't
get away from it.
We can't get away from
Who you are.
radiating
Wherever
who we are.
you go, there you are. There's a book
And
called
the good news is you can change who you are. That's really good news. So
Right.
a lot of people think, well, I'm stuck this way, so great. What do you mean is my poor kids have no hope because this is who I am? No, not at all. Change.
Exactly.
And change ways you think, but you have to change. I want to emphasize this because I can ask my kids to do things, even hard things, without making it a withdrawal
Mm-hmm.
because of who I am
Mm-hmm.
and the way I do it.
And because of the emotional bank account balance you have with them,
Right,
as an effect of that.
right. But I have huge deposits, but I can even make asks and I can even make demands. I can even sometimes correct them and simultaneously make a deposit instead of withdrawal
Mm-hmm.
because of how I roll. So I can ask them to do work and to get things done without being a drain, and my kids resent it. They don't like that I'm asking them to do things because of how I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to emphasize that. Like I can get my kids, and I've always greeted my kids every single morning.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it since we adopted our first, so it's 22 years. I greet my kids with enthusiasm, a smile, excitement for life. So they've learned to wake up and be like, woohoo, another day of life.
Yeah, and that's another good ingredient here. When we're talking about children waking up angry or, making these deposits in order to ease cooperation later in the day. I mean, that is something I would say we have done. That's one of the things in life I think I could say we've done, if not 100%, at least 99% of the time. Like, every single day that we are in the same house as our children, right? When we're gone, it doesn't count. We greet them in the morning with a hug and a kiss.
And a smile.
And a smile.
Enthusiasm. Like, hey, it's a new
Every
day. It's
single
great to see you.
Day. Like, that's something I don't think we've never not done.
Right.
And that's made a huge, again, when we talk about the details and the nuances and the things that make a difference, you might think, oh, that's not a very big thing. Wouldn't really make that big of a difference. But over time, it builds and it builds and it builds and it stacks in a positive direction. So that then becomes part of this filling of their emotional bank account. It's a regular deposit every single day. And so we're building that with them. And that is why we have more cooperation, or we can ask our things and it's not a withdrawal. Now, obviously, there's a lot more things we're doing as well, but that's one of the foundational pieces that makes a big difference.
Huge. And just think about it for a minute, psychologically and emotionally. When every single day of your life, somebody is excited to see you when you wake up.
Yeah. No, down, and
Somebody
it's
cares
true.
about you, and they're like, "Oh, you're awake. Come here, give me a big hug.
Yeah.
Yes, I love you. Good morning. How are you? How'd you sleep?"
And it is. It's that approach. And so that becomes the way of being, of interacting with our child, where we're legitimately, because we're not faking, excited to see that they're awake and
It's a new day.
it's a new day. Now, I can understand that, because I do remember this when I was younger, that sometimes I wasn't always excited they were awake. Because I'm like, oh, now interruption.
Now my work
personal time.
load.
Now my work begins. I didn't even get a break. But I learned to train myself to not allow that feeling to remain. I would quickly process that and be like, no, I'm glad to be a mother. I'm grateful to be a mother. I'm grateful to have this work. I'm grateful that my child is awake. I'm grateful my child is alive. Like, whatever I had to use to bring that real feeling of gratitude, it's like, no, I'm glad to see them.
Right. And then what you said was so important, Rachel, because you didn't try to mask it.
Right.
You
I
didn't say,
wasn't just covering
feeling
it. Like,
resentment and dread, I'm going to mask it real quick for them. You didn't say
Yeah.
that. You said, I'm going to remove that feeling and replace it with a genuine excitement. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to change my state and demeanor
Right.
so that I can engage in
Yeah.
authenticity.
Exactly. Right. But if our children wake up and immediately we have some sort of battle with them, especially because as this goes on, there's a few things they need to do before breakfast, which this is something we teach, right? But we need you to understand that there's a lot of details in this. When we're teaching these types of things, and I know it can come across because people come to stay with us, and we just expect you guys to be like hardcore, no fun,
Like
do the
drill
work.
sergeant,
Right.
military
We're
camp
like, okay.
family.
That's not who we are. They need to brush their teeth before breakfast. They need to do morning routine. She says it's still something he likes to rebel about.
Especially because he's a little boy.
Right. I mean, that's normal.
Your
Our 7-year-old.
daughters will do that way more easily than your boys will.
Yeah.
That's just the
Right.
nature. A little boy wakes up and he's like, I have to clean myself and make my bed.
What is this?
Yeah.
Our older boys still do this, and they're like 14 and
Yeah.
19. They're like, brush my teeth? Yes, you need to brush your teeth.
You mean I have to shower more than once a week? Like, yeah. But it's the nature of being a male.
Exactly.
It's there. So you have to make it more fun.
Right.
Make it joy, make it playful. Like, yeah, go do it. And again, how you invite them to do it and then how you insist that they do it, delivery matters. Tact matters. The emotional state matters. I can totally correct my kids and I can hold a firm boundary in such a pleasant way that they don't even know, what's going on.
Well-
Like, wait, am I being corrected here or I'm having some quality time
Yeah.
with dad? Like, what's going on?
And there still can be some discomfort or some, a little bit of wriggling from the pressure, so to say, mentally and emotionally, right? But they know that even though you're serious, it's done with love and we can still have fun with it. Like, we can have fun about, pointing out where you need to improve. And you and I try to do this too. We'll often playful be like, haha, yeah, you need to get better at that because that sucks, right? Like, come on here, babe. We can make it playful while still offering that correction or that feedback.
Now, the critics will say, no, these are serious things. And if you want your kids to take it seriously, you have to be serious. And you have to, be angry or upset, or you have to say harsh things, or you have to, again, you have to be serious because it is serious. Again, we just step back and say, well, look at the evidence. Look at the proof. You're serious about it. Is that working? Does that mean they never do it again? That they never, your little kids, they never make the same mistakes because you told them with your angry voice? Did that work? No, it worked for a little bit. And they just did it because they're afraid of you.
Right.
So we can get the results and we have the proof. We have the results. Results online. You can discipline and correct and teach in a pleasant way and they will get it.
Yeah, and it does require some experimentation because the way you do it is different than the way I do it and vice versa, and the way another parent's going to do it. We're not saying you have to do it exactly the way we're talking about, but we're saying experiment with it. Instead of thinking, I have to do it this certain way, and it's not working because you're not getting those results, or it is, quote-unquote, working, but it has
It's
the
temporary.
cost of emotional distance with you and your child,
Yep.
then try different things. Experiment with including, like we're talking about, playfulness, where you can find a way to get the results without damaging the relationship.
Either playfulness or pleasantness.
Yeah.
Just figure out how to, I guess that's my big invitation today. Figure out how to do all your parenting with a pleasant demeanor. It's
As
so much more enjoyable. It's easier. Your children are more responsive.
Mhm.
They're more likely to do it. They're more likely to want to do it.
Well, okay, I've got to mention a caveat here, though, because I think a lot of times when we say that type of thing, people are imagining gentle parenting where you never get after your kids. And I want to add that that's not the case. In fact, I firmly believe there are times when you really do need to get after your kids. But I want to emphasize that that should be rare. If you feel that you have to do that on a daily basis, something is wrong. I am talking about, yeah, I will use that when I need to, but that's usually a couple times a year.
I
Maybe.
think a perfect example is when early on when our kids would disrespect you.
Yes.
Like we'd be around working or doing something, and they would say or do something that was quite disrespectful to you. And again, I didn't insult them. I didn't yell and scream, but I went over and I said, "That is my wife, and nobody on this planet is allowed to talk to my wife like that, including you. You apologize to her, and you will never, ever do that again. I am dead serious. That is absolutely unacceptable."
That's the time to be serious.
And that put a stop to it. And I put a stop to it with the older kids, and so the younger kids never really. They just learned, like, they haven't done it.
But I think the reason why that's also more effective is because that's not your general way of being. You don't interact with them like that all the time. And so,
That may have
that's
been
kind
once
of
or twice per kid.
Yeah.
Period.
And that's kind of the point I'm making here is like, yeah, most of the time we are going to engage pleasantly with our children. We're going to be playful. We're going to have fun. They're going to know we're serious. But they also do know that we're serious because there have been those times when we're like, no, this is enough. But that is rare because we save it for when we really mean it and when they really have crossed a line.
Which is rare. Again, when you're operating pleasant and you're loving each other and take care of all the needs.
You're making those emotional deposits.
Things are good. Like, the times they cross the line are so rare, and they barely step across the line, so you correct them there. We haven't had any kids, like, just barreling off the cliff with insanity because we prevent it by living a good life, and then we stop it when they get to the edge.
Yes.
Like, whoa, we don't even go there.
Yeah. Now, I would like to add to this because our oldest daughter and I were talking about some things because they were helping to care for some children that had been in foster care and had, they had some legitimate, essentially mental and emotional issues at a young age. I mean, they're still very young, but they have these.
So sad.
And so I would add that in a case when you are trying to retrain a child, I would definitely include a little bit more authoritativeness. I'm not talking about manipulation and control, but there would be a little, I'm not talking about tyranny.
Boundaries.
But there would definitely be some, especially when you're trying to establish those boundaries, because they don't know about them. They don't know about the boundaries. I would definitely be a little firmer and a little, I want to use harsher, but I don't want that to be misinterpreted, to help establish those boundaries. But then I'm allowing this freedom. I'm allowing play. I'm allowing their natural inclinations to occur. And when they reach a boundary, I'll give them a warning, like, hey, here's the boundary. And if they cross the boundary, I'm going to be serious about the consequences. But otherwise, I'm going to be like, no, go ahead. Here, play. Enjoy yourself. Be a child, right? So it's kind of this mix of this. It's not really gentle parenting because I don't want to use that. I feel like it can have such a negative connotation for people where it's like, oh, can I have permission to touch you? No, we're not talking about that type of thing. But
May I have permission to correct you?
That's like kind of stuff, right? No, I don't agree with that.
And we even do this, you guys, just because of our lifestyle and we're having families in our world all the time. We even do this with other people's teens or toddlers or whatever. They come into our space, you come into our world,
Be like, hey, here's a boundary.
and we set the boundaries, and we do it in a pleasant way that they're like, oh, yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
and they always thrive. From toddlers to teens, they always thrive in our space. And they'll come and stay with us for weeks or months, which has happened. We've been doing that now for 15 years. And they thrive. They love it because it has clear boundaries mixed with total freedom.
Yes.
And it's this loving, gentle, happy place. And I like it here.
We talked a lot about it, and I think in our last episode about the fortress, talking about the fortress, and then, you hold the boundaries of that fortress, but within that fortress, there's a lot of freedom. Like, you pretty much get to decide when, where, how you do things within the boundaries of the fortress. Mm-hmm. So it is a very unique style, but it's one that's very effective because it's providing that space for children to thrive.
Yep.
Okay, just to close here, I think it's great. I think we've covered a lot of great things. But she's talking about, essentially, I think the routine here that's challenging her the most at the moment is she wants her child, and this is her oldest child, that's 7, still very young, and that's one of the challenges with having the oldest. You feel like they're so old.
Only child, or are there younger ones?
I am not sure, but I think there are others, but maybe not.
Sometimes an only child dynamic is challenging,
Yes.
and the oldest child dynamic is always challenging because they always feel like they have to do the most and carry the most load and be the most responsible. They just feel like they have this burden of being the oldest.
Right.
And there's a lot of truth to that, but there's also a great benefit to that. And we don't have to burden them more than they already feel burdened just because they're oldest.
And as a parent, I know for myself that I viewed my oldest as being so old, even though now I look back at, our youngest right now is 7, and I think that's still so young.
Yeah.
And she mostly just plays all day,
But
especially now that she has friends here.
But when our oldest was
7, we were
7
like,
or 8,
do this,
we had
do that,
4 other kids and babies, and we're like, you're so big, you're so
you should be
grown up.
taking care of all of these things.
You should be able to cook, clean, and sew and iron already. And I'm like, nah, man, it's just tiny.
Right.
But it's hard to have the contrast because you have a little baby thing.
Exactly. Right. So she's trying to get these routines. And again, still, and that being said, yes, every single morning my 7-year-old makes her bed, gets dressed, and brushes her teeth. Like, that's just a part of her routine. She does that, and she's learned to do that. So it's possible to have, when I say she plays all the time, I'm not saying she doesn't do anything else. She definitely does. She has her routines. She knows what to do. She follows those.
And I guess we implemented routines as a very positive thing, a very good thing. So
exactly.
the training process to get into routines, we did it so pleasantly that they just wake up and do it now. It's automatic default.
It is automatic.
They do it joyfully. So they wake up and before they even get out of bed, they're making their beds and they go in and brush their teeth, they change, they straighten things up. And it's just part of starting a day.
Right.
And there's no grumpiness, there's no complaint, there's no drudgery, there's no like, why do I have to do this? They just get up and do it, and they're happy to be alive and well, and we made the routine a positive thing. You always have to make whatever you want them to do attractive.
And so back, because she's saying that he's rebelling against that. Well, usually when children choose to rebel against something, it's because it's their way of trying to feel some sort of control in their life. So I would look at that. I would back up and take a look. Like, how am I making my child feel that I'm controlling their life instead of them being in control? Because back to what you're saying, we did always make them feel like this is your choice. This is why you should do it. Here's the reasoning behind it. They understood at their level, oh, that makes sense. I need to brush my teeth every day, especially first thing in the morning because my mouth was filling with bacteria and I need to get those little bugs off and clean my teeth and get them clean. They've understood the reasoning about why we were asking them to do things, and they opted in to do it, which is now why they just do it without being asked, because they're the ones that chose it. They're the ones that saw why it was important. They were the ones that decided to do it. So, but when a child feels like you're trying to control them and you're trying to make them do all the things, that's when they rebel. You can't rebel against yourself, right? If I'm the one that chooses to do it, I can't rebel against myself. So they can only rebel if they feel that you are forcing them to do it. So we just have to change those dynamics there so that it's no longer about me forcing you to do something or me requiring you to do something. It's like, hey, I am inviting you to do this thing, and I will invite with positive consequences,
That's
on
what I was just
occasion
gonna say.
with negative consequences if necessary.
I did it. Well, I did that with we do it with our kids, and I did it with some teens who are staying with us. We want to go to the beach, and I just happened to glance past the room and said, "Hey, your bed's not made, so there's no way in the world you're riding in my truck over to the beach if that bed's not made." And you should have seen him run. Like, I mean, they're in there, and then he would forget occasionally, and so instead of like, "I told you, what's wrong with you? You," instead of that, I'd be like, "What?" I made this big, like, dramatic deal. I'm like, "What? No way! Like, what? Somebody snuck into your room and undid your bed. Like, that is messed up. Like, who would do that? I'm confident you made it this morning, and somebody snuck in there and made it look like you didn't make it. That is so messed up." And so I did this big playful thing, and it was in front of everybody, right? And then that kind of came
That became the joke.
the ongoing joke. But in a way, I was disciplining, I was reminding, I was
emphasizing,
correcting.
Hey, you should be making your bed. How could you not have made your bed?
Right.
Like, what is this?
Yeah, why would anyone get up at your age? Anyone get up and not make their bed? That's crazy. Somebody must have sabotaged you. They don't want you to go to the beach for some reason. And so you keep emphasizing it, and it's in a totally playful way.
Right.
But the message is landing.
Yeah. And so, like with a younger child this age, for me, the motivation has always been food. Now, not the manipulation, not the control, but like, hey, I will make you some food. Why don't you go make your bed and brush your teeth while I'm doing that?
Or
Here's the
they
reason why,
now
of
they
course.
make their own food, right? And so it's
Okay, but that now gets us into the next level here.
okay.
Because there are definitely levels, just as we talked about before, I think, that sometimes you can do the right thing at the right time, but if you don't have the right kind of relationship, that's too big of an ask.
Yep.
So, yes, my 7-year-old now, she can make her own food when she wakes up.
But she's still not allowed to eat and make her own food if she hasn't done it.
Because that was
first.
a previous expectation that we created of like, in order for you to earn your breakfast, because I buy it, and in this case, when I'm training them, I prepare it for you to earn your breakfast.
Well,
It's kind of a trade-off
everything
in
is
that
earned.
case.
Everything in life is earned. I guess
I'm
that's the
saying,
fundamental we
I will
operate on.
make you your breakfast, and this was an intentional part of my training process. I will make breakfast for you, but you get to eat it once you have done these things. And she says here, should I just start with one thing, like brushing your teeth, before adding more, like getting dressed before breakfast? Then I can add more once he later accepts it? Yes. I would say, I'm going to use the word always, I've always done it that way. I do not,
Incrementally.
it's always incrementally. Because it's so much easier to win on one teeny little battle.
And you want, well, and
And
they
then you
want to
won.
win. They want to
want to
feel the
win.
win. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you praise them for that. Good job. And they get the reward. And then once that's now automatic, then I add the next thing. And I'll even warn them. I'll be like, you have been doing so well at brushing your teeth before breakfast. Now we're going to get dressed and brush your teeth before breakfast.
Because, as a proven principle, we want to stack wins.
Exactly.
Yep. So,
Yes.
like, set it up. What do you call it? Like, rigging the game
Yeah.
in their favor.
And that may
So they win all the time.
that may be even like a week or 2 weeks where they do just brushing the teeth, and I will continue to praise it. I will continue. They continue to get the reward, and then I will add to it. And depending on how well they respond, then I will add more things. But I don't, because one of the biggest problems parents have, and this comes up often in my family chart systems and charts, is that they want to do all the things at once. They feel like my house is chaos. I'm going to change it all. They go in, they create these huge charts with like 27 things to do, and then they're like, here kids, do these charts every day, and the kids are just overwhelmed. It's too much. But if you build it incrementally, when you're like, okay, we're starting with brushing your teeth. That's what you're doing this week. You're going to get up, you're going to brush your teeth. And that becomes a habit, and then you add one habit, one more habit, and then one more habit, and you do that, and you might think, well, that's going to take forever, it's going to take a year. It doesn't matter. It's going to last for a lifetime now. That's the point. You're creating lifelong habits,
Yep.
so it's okay if you just add
So,
one a
like,
week or
so
3 a month or
When they're
whatever.
teens, like in our case, we don't have to say anything.
Now, getting back to some of our boys, I do still have to remind them to brush their teeth sometimes because,
But
they're
like our two boys make their beds,
They make their beds and
religiously.
get
Their
up.
room looks amazing, which is rare for
teenage boys.
teenage boys.
In fact,
It's
my
crazy.
mother came to visit, and this is the irony too, because I am high in conscientiousness and industriousness, I have higher standards of cleanliness, and I thought, oh, their room's a little bit messy, but I didn't say anything, and she went in and was like, what a clean room, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right, it is clean, because I forget, like, for two teenage boys sharing a room, that's often a disaster, and theirs is just a little bit messy as well, so.
I want to give a specific, because I want to try to give as many specific tools or responses as possible. So as they come to mind, I just want to share them. You'll often, as you're adding more things to the list, you'll often get kickback from a kid like, "Ugh, that'll take forever," right? And in that response, instead of getting in an argument with them or a battle or no, mom, no, whatever, I'll just be like, "Forever. Let's time it." Okay, I'm gonna hit start, and I'll turn it into a game. Like, I'm gonna hit start, let's watch. I want you to go make your bed and make it look fantastic, but do it as quick as you can. Let's see if it gets to forever on my phone. And then, like, they come back, it was like 45 seconds or 60 seconds. I'm like, there you go, 60 seconds. You nailed it. Like, wow, that was awesome. Okay, not even close to forever. And so you just do playful ways to kind of frame things up. Or you might say, oh, it takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes, let's go. And then they come back in 2. You're like, look at you, that's amazing. You're so fast, you did it so well. Wow, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now you're going on the list. And I think I might also start with a list of 10 things, but not require the 10 things initially. So you're setting the expectation, like, hey, this is where we're going. Eventually we're going to do all this, but let's make sure, let's insist that 2 or 3 are getting done, and then we'll build on it.
Well, and I will also do that too, and then it becomes more of a negotiation, which also helps them feel that they have a little more power, because they'll be like, hey, here's all the things I want you to do, and they'll be like, oh, that's going to take forever type thing, and then like, today just do this first one, that's all that you need. And then suddenly they're like, oh, okay, that's easy because I can do that. Or I'll say just do the first 2 or whatever. And now suddenly I feel like that's so much easier. But I will emphasize, eventually we'll get to the whole thing, but for now, just do these. And they always feel like, that's totally doable. I'm pulling one over on mom here. Right? I'm only doing 2.
I just worked hard.
Yeah.
But we can do it with other things too. It's like, oh, hey, this new song came out, can we buy it? Or this new movie's coming out, I want to go see it in the theater. Like, there's your list, bro.
That too,
Nail
for sure.
the list. Go hit. If you hit everything on that list this week, for sure, you and I are going to the movies.
Yeah.
We're going to do this
Right.
cool thing.
Or my teens just asked me the other day, a new Brandon Sanderson book came out, and I've been waiting for 2 years. And they're like, will you buy it? And I was like, if you wash all the windows for me, yeah, I will buy it.
So
And
that's what happened, because the
That's what
windows
happened.
got clean.
windows got clean because of
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's perfect. Like, and so we've taught this so many times. We're going to keep teaching it. Stop saying no and say yes.
Find ways to say yes.
If.
Yeah.
Or yes, but. Yes.
When.
And just do that. So you're like, hey, we buy it? No. What do you think? Money grows on trees around here? Let's buy you another silly fiction fantasy.
You
book.
don't even help me out.
Yeah.
You won't even wash the windows. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
All you do is sit around on your book. No, I'd be like, yeah, of course. That'd be great. Let's have
you're
an exchange.
switching the narrative. You're switching the energy. You're changing it around. You're making it a positive environment instead of a negative one by focusing on what they want included with what you want, and then it's like this win-win.
Yeah, and you're teaching them. Always teaching them. You're the mentor. Well, that's our new parenting course that's coming out. It's the parent mentor. You're constantly mentoring. But everything in life is earned. And I think one of the greatest disservices that many moms do, it's more of a mom thing than a dad thing, is moms, in order to think they're being good moms, do way too much for their kids. Way, way, way too much. They're making all their meals. They're doing their laundry. They're waking them up. I'm like, no way. If your kids are, I don't know, well, let's say teens specifically, if your kids are teens and there's something that they need to be up for, they need to wake themselves up. And you think, no, I'm going to help them. I'm going to make sure they're not late. So literally you're stepping in and preventing all the natural consequences.
That would teach them lessons.
They would learn the lesson. You're like, no, but I'm paying for that. Blah, 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 blah. They're going to be late. So
How else are they going to learn? And
they
this
will
is why
never learn as long as you, mom, keep doing it for them.
that's why they go away to college and end up having all these consequences because mom's not there to do it for them.
And they're just completely incapable and lazy as teens. And a lot of moms are like, well, they don't know how. I'm like, well, let them go hungry. Let them go hungry for a couple days. Guess what's going to happen? They will learn how to cook. And they will. Bam. And again, we've had teens come sit with us for a long time. So they'll kind of be like, oh, I don't know how to cook. I'm like, well, let them go hungry. And that's my response. I'm like, well, go hungry. They learn how to cook. All of a sudden, they're figuring out how to cook something, make something delicious. And then you see them making this amazing meal.
Yeah.
And you're like, look at you go. 13 years old and rocking something amazing. Or they'll come and be like, oh, I don't have any clean clothes. I'm like, why? Oh, they're all dirty. I'm like, why? No one washed them. Like, what?
No one doesn't live here.
What in the world? Is that like some little gnome that comes around washing your clothes named no one? Like, what in the world? Who washes your clothes? You dirty them, you wash them. Like,
I don't know how to use
nothing.
a washer.
Go
Go
naked.
figure it out.
They're like, what? I'm like, I don't care. Like, well, I have nice clothes. Then you're going in your dirty ones and you'll be embarrassed. Well, my clothes stink. Then you're going to stink. We're going to go meet this new family, this cute girl, and you're going to reek natural consequences, sucker. And so you let them have the natural consequences. All of a sudden, guess what? They learn how to use the washer and dryer. And they keep on a schedule. And they take care of themselves because you stop taking care of them at appropriate ages, incrementally. But man, it just kills me to see good moms wanting to be good moms doing too much for their older kids. A little side note there. Okay, that it?
I think
Lots.
that's it. Yes.
Lots of awesome sauce today. Okay, love you guys. Thanks for listening. Practice this deep self-awareness. It's challenging. Self-awareness is challenging. And then situational awareness and people awareness. You start reading people, reading your kids, reading yourself, and then altering your demeanor, because we are 100% responsible for the energy that we bring and what we're radiating out. We're always radiating something. We can never avoid that, ever. Never get away from it. So choose to radiate what you want to radiate, not just letting some default happen. Okay, love you guys. Reach upward.